Anyway, Final Fantasy 16 hands-on preview. Let's take a look at it.
I was waiting for you.
Not for too long, I hope.
I remember being awestruck as a teenager by the way Shadow of the Colossus dwarfed my protagonist with its titanic creatures. That feeling of man versus mountain generated by the PS2 classic is something I've rarely experienced since. But at a recent hands-on event for Final Fantasy 16, it happened again. I felt that awe, that sense of colossal scale. But this time, rather than being a poetically beautiful battle, it was an explosive homage to anime warfare. The 2-hour demo was, according to developer Square Enix, a special version made for media to experience, and contents may differ from the final version. Pulled from around 5 hours into the story, the combat-focused segment contained a trio of boss battles that showcased Final Fantasy XVI's ambitious approach to scale. The first of these, a showdown with a spy named Benedicta, was a traditional human versus human clash that embraced the dexterity of this entry's new real-time action combat. But it was the other two, much grander fights that really caught my attention. Final Fantasy XVI sees a number of kingdoms caught up in a war over magical crystals. Key to this war are icons, colossal monsters that, if you're a Final Fantasy fan, you may know better as summons. In most previous games in the series, these deity-like creatures were effectively elaborate magic attacks, but in Final Fantasy XVI, they are vital components of the plot and act as major boss battles across protagonist Clive's journey. One such icon is Garuda, a 20-meter tall bird-like creature summoned by Benedicta that wields the power of wind. As I dodged and weaved around Garuda's leg...
I love how they have, like, the same music for the bosses, too. That's so badass, especially Garuda. That's one of my favorite tracks in Final Fantasy XIV.
And wings, deflecting blows that would kill a normal man, the battle called to mind scenes from kaiju movies and anime like Attack on Titan. After dealing enough damage to stun her,
especially
I could fire a magical grappling hook into her jaw and yank her head down to the ground, opening her face up for a chain of hugely damaging attacks. There's something inherently exciting about fights this large, and Final Fantasy XVI seems to be fully committed to going as big as it possibly can. That's not to say the game's strengths are only in these gigantic boss fights, though.
Yeah, I think that one thing they focused on with this game, it seems very clearly, is for it to look cool, for you to feel badass whenever you're playing it. And from everything that I've seen, it definitely achieves that.
While cutting down a whole garrison of swordsmen in the grittiest combat of Final Fantasy's 36-year history. Clive strikes with fury, impaling and even stomping on enemies that have fallen to the ground. That's not to say all the fantasy has been drawn out of Final Fantasy though, far from it. Magical abilities frequently coat the screen with vibrant particle effects.
Yeah, no shit.
It's all a bit overwhelming at first, and the arcade-like...
Yeah, that was one thing I thought, is like the spell effects are just like so overwhelming, would become like hard to even see what's going on because there's so much crazy shit happening on the screen.
UI that constantly spits out damage numbers is an ugly contrast against the world's otherwise handsome art. But as I settled into the systems, I found the blend of action and tactical abilities rewarding. It particularly came alive in the rapidly paced battle against Benedicta, who pushed me to make use of all of my many skills.
None of your talents are rare indeed.
I actually think that, like, in terms of like spell effects and things like that, it's actually really hard to get that right. And I think things like Classic WoW got it right, where like the spell is clearly visible, it's clearly meaningful, and it looks cool, but it's not so overwhelming that it just covers the entire fucking screen. Versus other games that have like these massive spell effects and you have to have like different settings to turn them all down because of how bad they are. And it's like, you go over and you watch Elden Ring, for example, and it's very impressive how the spell effects are very, like, they're very cinematic, but they don't actively obscure the game in the same way that whenever you're fighting Razageth and she moves her wing over your character, you can't see where you are. It's very impressive.
Clive is a nimble fighter, and each swing of his sword reminds you that Final Fantasy XVI's combat director is Ryoto Suzuki, best known for his work on Devil May Cry and Dragon's Dogma. Fights feel fast, layered, and incredibly flashy. The core fundamentals are pulled from Japanese action classics: dodges, parries, uppercuts, and combo attacks. But built atop this is a magic system that sees you channel the power of different icons to unleash powerful special attacks.
Yeah, that's so fucking badass.
I had access to the power of 3 icons: the Fiery Phoenix, the Winds of Garuda, and the earth-shattering magic of Titan. Only one icon's abilities can be channeled at a time, but a quick press of the left trigger cycles through each summon on the fly. You could fire a blast of Phoenix Flames, for instance, before quickly swapping to Garuda to launch your target into the air with a hurricane-like spin.
Kind of like Genshin Impact. In an abstract way. You're using different elements.
And finally switch to Titan to finish them off with a charged power attack that strikes downwards with stone fists. Each icon ability has its own cooldown, so hot swapping between them mid-fight and managing their wait times provides a light tactical edge to each clash. I'm interested to discover what tactics will be unlocked as Clive gains the power of even more icons, and I hope they feel as distinct as the 3 I've used so far. If you're accustomed to Final Fantasy's more relaxed days of picking attacks from a menu and find all of this somewhat intimidating, you may find solace in Square's novel approach to accessibility.
Yeah, they basically have a mode in this game where you just pretty much can play with a garage door opener, and then the game, every time you hit the button, the game just uses the command that would have been the most optimal command inside of the time period that you hit that button. Yeah, you just play it with a garage door opener. Yeah, it's an auto-clicker, exactly. Any idiot can beat this.
Rather than difficulty
Which is a good thing, I think
that's fine. There's a collection of 5 rings that bestow combat easing effects. The Ring of Timely Evasion, for instance, will make Clive automatically dodge most incoming attacks.
Very convenient.
While the Ring of Timely Strikes will perform elaborate combos with just one tap of the attack button.
That's very,
there are utility-focused rings too, including one that issues commands to Clive's dog, Torgal, who can provide attack and healing assistance. With the combat already sufficiently layered, I can imagine even skilled players may also opt to skip the pet micromanagement.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
These rings will hopefully mean fans of varying skill levels will all be able to enjoy Final Fantasy XVI's clashes, which are made all the more dramatic by the way your attacks can seamlessly blend into cinematics that showcase a particularly cool strike or evade.
Yeah, I think that's also really impressive, the fact that like they have so many in-engine cinematics that are actually very well produced.
These moments are coupled to a button prompt, and while I'm generally averse to QTEs in combat, Square Enix seems to have made it work. The slick presentation made each of the boss battles feel like momentous fights, rather than interrupted melees. The overall sense is that Final Fantasy XVI will let us be directly involved in the outrageous anime-like battles typically reserved for cutscenes. That's never more true than in what is likely to become Final Fantasy XVI's flagship battle mode, Icon versus Icon.
Yeah, exactly.
When Clive summons an Icon, you're put in direct control of them, and each of these explosive clashes...
I feel like this is like one of the new things that a lot of games are doing, is people like Attack on Titan a lot, so every game that's kind of like this, every like anime styled or like, you know, like they're doing this Throne and Liberty, Final Fantasy 16, and like a couple other ones, they're like, okay, so... Alright, well, we'll just put that in the game then. You could turn into a big guy, alright.
Between Gods are promised to be a unique experience with bespoke mechanics. The third boss of the demo, a beatdown between Garuda and the fire demon Ifrit, was something akin to a nuclear-powered wrestling match. Compared to Clive, Ifrit is a very simple fighter, with just a scant few brawling abilities.
Yeah, it's like being in a vehicle in WoW.
Full use of that blending between cutscene and gameplay to convey Ifrit's immense heft and strength. Each time I'd land a blow on Garuda, a new animation would trigger, my favourite of which was dragging my foe face first across a rocky landscape.
Jesus.
It was a shallower combat experience compared to controlling Clive in the clashes with Benedicta and Garuda, but I can forgive that if the spectacle proves this wild
badass.
Yeah, exactly. Every time. Playing 3 very different boss fights, as well as carving my way through dozens of regular soldiers, has left me with a lot of hope for Final Fantasy XVI. But this demo was purely combat focused, meaning I've yet to see much of its RPG credentials.
Yeah, I'm more excited about this game than I was for Hogwarts Legacy. By a pretty considerable margin, too.
This demo's generic medieval castle setting barely had any exploration opportunities. feeling mostly like a stone-walled route towards the next boss. But as previously mentioned, the contents of this demo may differ from the final version, and so I hope when more is revealed, we'll discover it has environments that are much more compelling to explore. Because should the story, exploration, and characters live up to what I've seen of the combat so far, then Final Fantasy XVI will be a JRPG worth being excited about.
Oh, Yoshi P not gonna like that one.
For more looks at upcoming games, check out our previews of Crime Boss Rock City and Kerbal Space Program 2.
JRPG.
And for everything else, stick with IGN.
This is a good video. It definitely was. I really hope this game comes out. When does it come out again? I fucking forgot. I mean, actually, no, there's no hopes anymore about it. They said it's coming out for sure, right? Yeah, never invite. It comes out in June. Okay, all right. Well, then we're going to play it in June. I fully intend. I have a PS5 right over there. And we are going to play this game on release. And it's also going to come out for PC, I think at the end of the year. That's what I believe they said. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a busy month. Oh, there's a lot of busy things for me to have to do. I think, yeah, June is also, oh, it's Diablo 4 too. Oh, fuck. God, man, I'm so busy playing all of these video games. It's just, oh my God. Like, there's so many video games I have to play. It's overwhelming. God, I need a day off where I could just, you know, play video games or something. Wow. Work is hard. Yeah, it's brutal, guys. There's a video. Make sure to give it a like. This is great. I hope they do more of these. I'll be very curious to see how this game actually turns out. I think this is going to be a very controversial game for fans of Final Fantasy because of how much of a departure it is. But I think it is a much needed departure. You always need to change what you're doing and innovate rather than just stick around and do the same shit over and over and over.